I thank the universal truth and the absolute laws of nature for guiding me, protecting me, and giving me the strength to endure the imperfect. I shall attack with vigor, making progressive moves. The divine mind knows, the divine mind shows all things work in divine order. All things work in divine order. All things work in divine order. Peace and power to the people that struggle. What's good, what's good, what's good? Oh, it's an early edition. I can't play with y'all out here. That's right, fella. What up, Frank? Erie County, what up? Big Worm. T, what up? Both T's. Tisha and Tia. What up, y'all? Early edition. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How are you, sister? Tom, what up? Yeah, it's early. Early. Oh, love and light to you. It's early. But yo, we at the home stretch and it's hot. Big Mom, salute, it's hot. We at the home stretch and it's early. I can't, nah. I don't like it. Jason Reels, what up? I don't like it. Straight up. Don't get it. I don't know how y'all do it. 24/7 all that night. Listen, once I start sweating every day, no. No. And I'm not trying to knock anybody who was born and raised and out here or out west or wherever. No, this ain't for me. Yvette, what's up? What's good with you? I need y'all to follow me on Twitter. Extended family, all that. Get my Twitter numbers up so I can start doing this Twitter spaces. And you can have more of an interaction. You understand? So yeah, Bliz155. Now I have 2 Twitter accounts. Go to the one where you see the most recent posts. Bliz155. At Bliz155 on Twitter. Alright? Because they can't stop the bum rush. They can't stop it. Any format, any platform that I could get the message out, that's where I'm going to be. Suspended your account, both accounts? What was you doing? You know how it is when you are in the dean and on Twitter. Nah. You know? Yeah, Kelly Mills, you supposed to check me everywhere. What you talking about? I checked you there. You had burgers today, T? That's what's up. What I do, truth, and I hear you. That's what's up. But yeah, we're going to get into this. We doing this early. Thanks to my moderators for coming through. Get all the information out there. You lost on Twitter? It's simple. Keep doing it. Ma, I added you today too, so just stay on there. Everything is good. You know? Everything is good. We'll show you how to navigate it. It's easier to navigate than any other platform. In all reality, it's just kind of fake in how, I was one of the first ones. Hey, ATM Tim. I was one of the first ones to have a Twitter account. I could remember vividly when Ashton Kutcher was promoting it, and I jumped on it. And as you'll see, my Twitter account goes back to like 2009. And I didn't like it because you can follow somebody and they not necessarily follow you. So when you are tweeting or trying to get, at that time, being in touch and having celebrities on these platforms was kind of big. So I'm like, if you can make direct contact, you could get firsthand information. And you could, if somebody got 100,000 followers and you follow them and you add them in a tweet, it's not necessary that they're going to see it. So I left it alone for years. For years. No doubt, AMLG, no doubt. So I stopped messing with it. But now they got the spaces on it. See, all of these platforms, if they're not owned by the same company, they're in competition. So now they have a chat line similar to Clubhouse, and it's decent. We was on there last night, since they just disrespected and sabotaged our chat when I was on Doggy Diamonds last night. They just bamped it, just dead it. Like, you're not doing nothing. So, yeah, they did us dusty last night. So we went over there and had a very lively conversation about that topic at hand. So, like I said, wherever I can be reached or wherever I can reach the people, I'm going to utilize it. I'm going to utilize it. Because, again, if our predecessors, if our elders, you understand what I'm saying, was utilizing the most basic forms of communication, typewriters, you understand, reel-to-reel recorded cassettes and things of that nature, and had great gains with that, there's no excuse when we have technology right here. That's why you know that the vibrations amongst our people are so low. Because if I don't have 6,000 on YouTube yet. Yeah, like I said, people that come on after me who is getting pushed or who are utilizing different corporations to get them exposure, attention, subscribers, they come out, boom, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 out the gate without saying anything. We know it's a problem, a serious problem. But what do I do? Do I sit back and sulk about it? No. Job got to get done. I got to do it. So even if I have what I have, that's more than I thought I would ever have. Like I said, I never said that this is what I'm going to do. But the conditions of our people, the conditions of our situation forces one, right, to utilize whatever we have at our disposal. So, I'm a soldier physically, right? A military strategist, tactician. But I also know how to articulate the specific theories and strategies. You dig? So whatever has to be done in order to move the needle. All right? Whatever has to be done. So moderators, get it right. Everybody do what we do. Keep all the information popping in the chat. Keep all of the Cash App information in the chat, the emails, everything. Portland, Jamaica, what up? What up? Brethren, what it do? You dig? Keep everything popping as we go on. Like I said, we just about done. We just about done. And then what do we do? Do we end Saturday Night Book Club after one book? Has it been fruitful? Has it been a point of growth for anybody who's been here? Let it be known. Let it be known. If it's fruitful, if it is something that has been useful, we got to rock out. We got to rock out. You understand? Come on. That's how we moving. That's how we moving. E, what up? All right. So here we go, chapter 17, page 241. 241. We about to close. All right? Come on now. We doing what we do. So let's get it. Keep it popping. And remember, it's hot. So y'all can play around and don't engage tonight if you want to. And I'll get my ass right back up in that noisy ass house. Cause I don't like being out. I don't like when the drawers start to stick into the back of your leg. No, I don't like that. I don't. I don't like the heat. I'm telling you right now. We're gonna be up, engaged, ready, enthusiastic, loving each other, striving, pushing. Salute to my sister. May Allah bless you. Thank you. All right, let's get it popping. Chapter 17. Over the next few years, home became a lot of places. I traveled quite a bit and met up with some really beautiful people. People so beautiful, they restored my faith in humanity each time I passed through their station. Like most of us back in those days, I was new at this, learning about clandestine struggle as I lived it. I didn't have many fixed ideas at first about what I thought armed struggle within the confines of America should be like. I had done a lot of reading about it in other places, but I had no concrete idea how to apply the lessons from those struggles to the struggle of black people within the United States. It was clear that the Black Liberation Army was not a centralized, organized group with a common leadership and chain of command. Instead, there were various organizations and collectives working out of different cities, and in some of the largest cities, there were often several groups working independently of each other. Many members of the various groups had been forced into hiding as a result of the extreme police repression that took place during the late 60s and early 70s. Some had serious cases, some had minor ones, and others, like me, were just wanted for quote-unquote questioning. Now, this is important, and it is important why. And in these last chapters, I want you to really pay attention to my language. It is important because now, as she stated, the late 60s, early 70s, these very exact conditions are going on right now, globally. Understand me. Right now, these exact conditions are going on globally the same way that they were moving back then. Why? Because the factors that make up capitalism, the factors that make up and uphold oppression have not changed. When the dynamics and the phenomena of a specific condition does not change, all of the results, all of the mathematical determinants of those conditions will continue in the same path. It doesn't matter the group. It doesn't matter what is being called or labeled. And the rhetoric, if it has not changed, everything will keep moving in that same order. So we are going through exactly the same exact circumstance that was going on during that time. So when you see people storming the Capitol, when you see people in Sri Lanka storming the palace, when you see upheaval in Haiti, when you see people being awakened in the diaspora, when you see people moving in Europe as such, these are the same conditions. When you're watching assassinations take place on live television, right? The same exact way we went through, right, with Honey Fitz's grandson, is the same thing we just watched that took place in Japan. All right? And if you don't know who Honey Fitz is, do your homework. Because that's who really was the gangster in that family that pushed one of his grandchildren to the presidency. So when you see these things taking place, these are the exact same conditions. So the organization of separate groups and the lack of them moving together caused them numerous casualties, through many meeting their demise and many more becoming imprisoned up until now, from those previous decades up until now. So it's the same exact thing. All right? Everything. Everything. The poverty, the unemployment, the brutality, everything is the exact same pace. The distractions, all that. So as we're going through and we're getting an understanding of someone who was in the mix of it and didn't understand, what we have to take from it is that because it's being articulated to us in this format, is that we do have the time to understand it and understand our role in it. All right? That's the important piece here. You have to be aware of the pros, the cons, and the in-between. That's how we learn from them. Okay, if y'all hear that, it's going to start to drizzle, but I ain't going nowhere. We got business to tend to. If it get loud, I'll try to speak up. All right? We learning. And if at any point you don't understand something, go back to the previous Saturdays, re-listen, and get caught up. Sisters and brothers joined these groups because they were committed to revolutionary struggle in general and armed struggle in particular, and wanted to help build the armed movement in America. It was the strangest feeling. People I used to run into at rallies were now in hiding, sending messages that they wanted to hook up. Sisters and brothers from just about every revolutionary or militant group in the country were either rotting away in prison or had been forced underground. Everyone I talked to was interested in taking the struggle to a higher level. But the question was how? How to bring together all those people scattered around the country into an organized body that would be effective in struggling for black liberation. And that is always going to be the question. Remember, Adam Clayton Powell separated. Closed fist, what's in your hand? What's in your hand? If we are separated across states, cities, counties, and moving independently and with no central organization where we have true leadership that is responsible and accountable for missteps and gains, then you have nothing. You will literally have nothing because you're too scattered. So you really are not able to know what gains and losses you have. You don't know what was effective and what wasn't. Why? Because there's no accountability. Now, back then, we can see why. Communications was off. Now, there's absolutely no excuse. But it's always up to the people to choose the leadership. Can't come out and claim, say I'm a leader. No. The conditions, the work, the effectiveness of the individual and the commitment pushes and thrusts you to leadership. And once that is recognized by the people and that individual, then you can get on to making true analytical decisions. So of course they didn't know what was going on. Of course they all had to run and hide because they didn't understand, as she said, they're studying and trying to apply strategies that they watched, witnessed, or was given intel on from other spaces on the globe. We are unique here. This is a unique situation here. Why? For various reasons. Everything was stumbled upon. They stumbled upon this part of the globe. They stumbled upon the indigenous people. They stumbled upon the use of the Atlantic slave trade. Shit wasn't set out. They stumbled upon it and capitalized off of their errors, capitalized off of what was there. So as this land, as this corporation grew and the landscape changed, and you go through different periods of rebellion and search for freedom, you come through decades, a century and a half, and you get to a space where you can not only study past rebellions which were fought in the woods and in the jungles and in deserts. We are in different conditions. And if you cannot take the good from the bad, if you cannot make use of what you can and discard the useless, you're going to make mistakes. Which is why I always say, cannot come from this, from a purely melanated doctrine. You have never witnessed anything in recorded history as the phenomena and the dynamics here. So we have to build that. We have to manifest that and see exactly what it looks like when you're talking about struggle, armed struggle, movement, responsibility for yourself and others. It's not like Vietnam. It is not like the Congo. It is not like Algiers or Cuba or Palestine. This is a very different dynamic. And the only way we can truly see what works and what doesn't work is to be active. That's it. Got it? Let's move on. It became evident almost from the beginning that consolidation was not a good idea. There were too many security problems and different groups had different ideologies, different levels of political consciousness, and different ideas about how armed struggle in America should be waged. On the whole, we were weak, inexperienced, disorganized, and seriously lacking in training. But the biggest problem was one of political development. There were sisters and brothers who had been so victimized by America that they were willing to fight to the death against their oppressors. They were intelligent, courageous, and dedicated, willing to make any sacrifice. But we were to find out quickly that courage and dedication were not enough. To win any struggle for liberation, you have to have the way as well as the will, an overall ideology and strategy that stem from a scientific analysis of history and present conditions. So as you see, when people make an attempt to just throw B1 at you, what does B1 really mean? When they make an attempt to show you arms, what does that really mean? When they spit empty rhetoric like no justice, no peace, what? What does that really mean? I always say you can be angry all you want. You can actually be angry all you want. You can rage deep inside all you want. If there's no intelligent manifestation of how mad you are, which will transform itself into a movement that can be utilized by the people, just a dumb, angry nigga. That's all. To be laughed at, to be discarded, to be slapped around, to be shot down alone, to be in prison. We did that. We've been through all that. We've been through all that. What's new? What's next? That is where we win at. Some of the groups thought they could just pick up arms and struggle, and that somehow people would see what they were doing and begin to struggle themselves. Didn't I just say that? Didn't I just say that? They wanted to engage in a do-or-die battle with the power structure in America, even though they were weak and ill-prepared for such a fight. But the most important factor is that armed struggle by itself can never bring about a revolution. Revolutionary war is a people's war. And no people's war can be won without the support of the masses of people. Armed struggle can never be successful by itself. It must be part of an overall strategy for winning, and the strategy must be political as well as military. So you understand what I've been saying for the past decade, 12, 14 years. Don't allow these people to come on social media and emotionally charge you and to get you to believe in pure ignorance. Because we've witnessed people. We have witnessed people put in that necessary work. And their own people sit on the sidelines, terrified, scared, crying, not knowing what to do, not understanding the enormity of that event. We watched what happened in Dallas. And people on the news crying. Your people who claim to have been out there to protest. And the beautiful work I put in. And they were shook to the bones. I'm telling you. It's a different ball game once them things start going off. Don't let these people gas you. About schools and museums and all type of old weird shit. They not about it. They not built for it. Since we did not own the TV stations or newspapers, it was easy for the news media to portray us as monsters and terrorists. The police could terrorize the black community daily. Yet if one black person successfully defended himself or herself against a police attack, they were called terrorists. It soon became clear to me that our most important battle was to help politically mobilize, educate, and organize the masses of black people and to win their minds and hearts. It was inconceivable that we could survive, much less win anything, without their support. Every group fighting for freedom is bound to make mistakes. But unless you study the common fundamental laws of armed revolutionary struggle, you're bound to make unnecessary mistakes. Revolutionary war is protracted warfare. It is impossible for us to win quickly. To win, we have got to wear down our oppressors, little by little, and at the same time, strengthen our forces, slowly but surely. I understood some of my more impatient sisters and brothers. I knew that it was tempting to substitute military for political struggle, especially since all of our above ground organizations were under vicious attack by the CIA, the FBI, and the local police agencies. All of us who saw our leaders murdered, our people shot down in cold blood, felt a need, a desire to fight back. One of the hardest lessons we had to learn is that revolutionary struggle is scientific rather than emotional. I'm not saying that we shouldn't feel anything, but decisions can't be based on love or on anger. They have to be based on objective conditions and on what is rational, unemotional thing to do. In 1857, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that blacks were only 3/5 of a man and had no rights that whites were bound to respect. Today, more than 125 years later, we still earn less than 3/5 of what white people earn. It was plain to me that we couldn't look to the courts for freedom and justice any more than we could expect to gain our liberation by participating in the U.S. political system. And it was pure fantasy to think we could gain them by begging. The only alternative left was to fight for them. And we were going to have to fight like any other people who have fought for liberation. I wasn't one who believed that we should wait until our political struggle had reached a high point before we began to organize the underground. I felt that it was impossible to start building underground structures. I felt that it was important to start building underground structures as soon as possible. And although I felt that the major task of the underground should be organizing and building, I didn't feel that armed acts of resistance should be ruled out. As long as they didn't impede our long-range plans, guerrilla units should be able to carry out a few well-planned, political objectives. Well-armed, well-timed armed actions that were coordinated with above-ground political objectives. All right? Let me repeat. As long as they didn't impede our long-range plans, guerrilla units should be able to carry out a few well-planned, well-timed armed actions that were well-coordinated with above-ground political objectives. Not any old kind of actions, but actions that black people would clearly understand and support, and actions that were well publicized in the black community. End of chapter. End of chapter. Now, I'm out here. Y'all see this, right? I'm out here. What else can I do? I can't even get back to the house. My umbrella in the trunk. Oh! Y'all see that? Damn! I don't even know how long it's gonna last. Yeah. But that's how important book club is. You understand what I'm saying? It's not a game. Not at all. Not at all. That's how important it is. You dig? What up, Mike? Lisa, what up? Well, I ain't in New York. I don't have no snacks. Not a snack. Well, I look like I don't have no snack. What snack? They ain't send me no snacks. Snack. I look like I got a snacky snack somewhere. Come on now. That's what we do, book club. We bring the we open up the clouds. Excuse me. You don't need no snacky snacks. I need some snacky snacks. What you talking about? I need some snacky snacks. I mean, we don't need no snacky snacks. Y'all ass in the house. Talking about I don't need no snacky snack. Damn it, I'm 53 years old. I need all the snacks I can get. You see this skin? This skin needs some nourishment. I'm just sitting out in the damn rain in the car. You see this? That's snacks. I don't need no snack. What you talking about? Can't ask me about Monday. I don't know about Monday. Hold up. JG, what does it say about the nature of American politics? The nature of American politics didn't go anywhere. It's always been the same. It's to keep the corporation in tune. So of course they're going to go after her and bring her back. Make an attempt to. That's just what it is. The nature of American politics has always been evil. What happened to the bill last night? Sabotage. Once you start speaking about the spooky and telling the truth, they sabotage you. Enjoy the rain. No, Lisa, this is not the mighty UK. We don't like the rain. Y'all get the rain all the time. Y'all know how to dance in it. Now over here. You love to sleep in the rain, really? I hear that. Watch it now. Damn. Damn. So look, we out here, damn it. Chapter 18. Y'all ready? Or not? Chapter 18. What we going to do? We going to do this or not? Let me know. Black hearts if we go on to chapter 18. Let me get some black hearts. Let's get some cash apps running through. We doing it. Talk about it. Talk about it. What we doing? What we doing? We going hard? Let's go hard. Chapter 18, 244. After my acquittal in the Queens bank robbery case in Brooklyn Federal Court on January 16th, 1976, I was brought back to New Jersey, placed in the basement of the Middlesex County Jail for Men in solitary confinement, and held there for more than a year until the Jersey trial was over. Lennox Hines, then the head of the National Conference of Black Lawyers, together with the other members of the defense team, filed a civil suit against the state, charging that my conditions were cruel and inhuman. After a long, drawn-out court battle, both sides agreed that a hearing officer should review my jail conditions and make a ruling. The hearing officer was a man named Ploshnik, who was appointed by the state. We had no say whatsoever in who was appointed, and therefore expected the decision to be favorable to the state. But he surprised everybody and ruled that my conditions of imprisonment were indeed inhuman, and recommended that they be changed at once. But through a series of appeals and legal maneuvers, the state succeeded in keeping me confined in that basement. When the government finds it convenient to follow its own laws and administrative procedures, it does. And when it finds that these same laws are inconvenient for their own purpose, it simply ignores them. All right? So stop with the comparisons of when it's black and they do this and they do that, but when it's white, they do this and do. That's common knowledge. So stop with the comparisons. Stop it already. It is what it is, and we have to deal with it. It is never in their bylaws for us to benefit of any laws that govern this land. It is not for us to benefit. They will always have a space where it's more beneficial to them to be engrossed in the legal system, and for us to always get the worst of it. That's just how it is. There's nowhere in the language, there's nowhere it's written that it is ever going to benefit us. It don't happen. So stop with the fantasy bullshit. Damn. Exactly, Jay. Non-humans. Right? I ain't afraid. I got a solder with me. I ain't afraid. To understand what was just written here. And stop believing that what's good for them is going to be good for us. It doesn't work like that. It will never work like that. Excuse me. I decided that I wanted Stanley Cohen and Evelyn to work together on the case. This turned out to be a mistake, since they were not exactly in love with each other. Neither Stanley nor Evelyn was a New Jersey lawyer, and we had to get a New Jersey lawyer to be on the case. Ray Brown was busy with other commitments and couldn't possibly do it. Stanley asked a young white New Jersey lawyer named Stuart Ball, and after some reservations, he agreed to be the admitting lawyer. Stanley also wanted a young lawyer, Lawrence Stern, to act as his assistant. Even though Evelyn was involved in the defense and Lennox was handling the civil suit around my prison conditions, The Conference of Black Lawyers assigned a young black lawyer from Mississippi named Lewis Myers to work on the case. I was delighted. Everyone knew that the New Jersey trial was the big one and that my chances of receiving a fair trial were about slim to none. So the strategy was to try to surround the defense team with as much resources and expertise as possible. Hold on. Gotta turn this back on. It's warm. Getting a little monkey. Y'all still with me? Y'all ready? Y'all ready? All right. It sounded like a good idea, but if there was ever a case of too many cooks in the kitchen, this was the case. Almost from the beginning, the defense team was beset by personality conflicts. The problems were magnified greatly by the fact that nobody was being paid. The lawyers were having problems covering even their bare expenses. It seemed like every other month, one or another of the lawyers was asking the judge to be relieved from the case. All right? So you see the conflict. You see what was going on. So, I ask you, were there not celebrity athletes in 1976? Were there not celebrity actors and actresses in 1976? Were there not black-owned businesses in 1976? Why was her defense team void of resources? When this was not just a regular, this was a black woman, a sister fighting for her life. So you mean to tell me today, in this day and time, when y'all stomping and talking about billionaires, multi-millionaires, and I'm not talking about those who may have been educated through fraternities and sororities and going through a brainwash and miseducation of their scholastic systems. I'm talking about billionaires, multi-millionaires who just got out of high school. Some of them with GEDs because they were in the street and in prison and got resources and they can't fund no type of liberation movements? What good is it to us? You come here to be educated. You come here to make sense of what doesn't make sense. We were in dire need of experts. We needed to find a ballistics expert and a forensic chemist, among others, to refute the state's charges. We were also in desperate need of an investigator to locate some of the doctors who had treated me while I was hospitalized and other potential witnesses. We fought and harped on this point and until finally the judge, Theodore Appleby, issued an order that the state pay for the experts. But once we got the order, we found that we were in the same position that we started from. Without exception, everybody that we went to for help turned us down. You understand what I'm saying? You fighting for the liberation of your people, and you can't find experts to assist you? Come on. Come on now. Turn them down. The types of experts we needed almost always are police or are working for police agencies. Because my case involved the murder of a police officer, none of them would touch the case. The most crucial part of the prosecutor's case was the scientific testimony, alleging that I had huge amounts of the dead state trooper's blood on me. We wanted someone who knew what they were doing to go over every inch of the clothes, to check out what was on them, and also to check out what had been done to them. But we could not find one forensic chemist to work for us, let alone testify for us. If they had, they would never again have been able to work in peace for any police agency. People never, ever, people never hear about this side of the trial. But there is no place a defendant in a criminal trial can go to find experts in sciences commonly known as police sciences. The police can virtually write up a report saying anything they want, and there is no way of refuting it. And there have been cases where experts have been double agents, working for a defendant while secretly working with the prosecutor. All right? And today may be a little different. Not much. Just a little. Just a little. But you play up in the legal system if you want to. I've been there. It's not fun. One of the amazing things was the number of student supporters who gave their time and energy to help us. They volunteered to index and organize past transcripts, and together with political activists, did a survey of prospective jurors in Middlesex County. Members of the Defense Committee published a bulletin to keep people informed about what was happening in the case, and also did speaking engagements and fundraising. People circulated petitions and demonstrated in front of the courtroom. They volunteered to do typing, handle the telephones, etc. Entertainers like Harry Belafonte, Ozzie Davis, and Ruby Dee performed at fundraising events. Poets like June Jordan, Audre Lorde, and Sonia Sanchez, among others, gave poetry readings. Political activists like Angela Davis and Amiri Baraka worked hard to educate the people about what was happening in New Jersey. When Angela Davis came to New Jersey to do a speaking engagement on my behalf, the New Jersey prosecutor's office ambushed her and her party, harassing them until the moment they left the state. She tried to visit me at the jail, and not only did the judge forbid her to visit, but he stopped all of my other visits as well. Do you get that? So you tell me, when you see the theatrics of these people getting arrested at protests and getting out the same day or hours later. Yeah, I know who I'm talking about too. Y'all know who I'm talking about. They denied her visits. They denied Angela Davis. We had the top celebrities of, right, that generation on notice. People were watching. So you mean to tell me today, when you see people protesting George Floyd, when you see people protesting Breonna Taylor, when you see people protesting in the name of all these people, the Blakes, the Garners, and they could get arrested and come home the same day? How effective are they? Who are they really working with? When you're in true liberation mode, you don't get released. You're not allowed to go up in buildings and prisons and jails. Let these clowns tell you that they bout something. They pushing for liberation and justice. They pushing for attention in the bag. One of the most moving statements I have ever heard was a speech Judge Bruce Wright made at a fundraising rally for me. Judge Bruce Wright is a black judge who was removed from the criminal court bench in New York because he was too fair and honest, and he did something that was unforgivable. He set poor people's bail at amounts they could afford to pay. The courts will never be anything but a tool of repression until there are judges like Bruce Wright presiding over black people's trials. And you know what his nickname was? Cut him loose, Bruce. You know, when you've been through the New York system a couple of times, you recognize the name. Cut him loose, Bruce. Because he did what they said. You're supposed to have a bail that's affordable. So he didn't care what the charge was. You had an affordable bail. All right? There were many, many people who I never got to meet, even though they worked so hard on my behalf. And even though I never got a chance to thank all of the black people, white people, do you hear me? Do you hear me? And even though I never got a chance to thank all of the people, right? Black people, white people. So when I say it, I'm not just saying it. She said it. Daruba said it. Others have said it. Third world people, all the students, feminists, revolutionaries, activists, etc., who worked on the case, I thank you now. A lot of the pre-trial conferences had to do with nothing more than the defense making motions and the judge denying them. Every time we went to court, the judge made a point of reading into the record that I had refused to stand up for him. He was one of those racist white dogs who really believed he was massa. He really took that "Your Honor" stuff seriously. If he could have made people bow to him and kiss his hand, he would have done it. He claimed that he was a stickler for the decorum of his courtroom. Plenty of decorum, but not a bit of justice. Stand for him? It was out of the question. He was a real dyed-in-the-wool cracker. The kind that could send, the kind they could send to wipe out the natives in Africa, make Central America safe for United Fruit Company, or run a sterilization center in Puerto Rico. Stanley Cohen came to see me. He was excited and upbeat. His good news was that he had found an investigator, an old friend of his who owed him a favor. All right? An old friend of his who owed him a favor. His friend had contacts with the New Jersey State Police and thought they might be able to come up with some information on Harper, the police officer who was the main witness. He was also making progress in finding a forensic chemist. We both felt that at least some of the scientific reports had been fudged by the New Jersey State Troopers. We talked about this and a million things before the visit ended. He was so positive. He said he had a plan, something he wanted to check out, but he didn't want to discuss it and raise my hopes prematurely. That was the last time I saw Stanley Cohen. A few days later, I received a phone call. Stanley was dead. His body had been found in his home with evidence of trauma. Nobody, with the exception of the police and Stanley's family, knows to this day the cause of death. The newspaper stated Stanley died of natural causes, but a friend of Stanley's, a doctor, told me he had talked to the coroner's office and had been given conflicting stories. No one knows for sure how Stanley died, and we probably never will. The one thing we do know is that after his death, all the legal papers on my case came up missing. Evelyn talked to Phyllis, Stanley's widow, and she gave her every legal paper she could find that had something to do with my case. But the bulk of the material was still missing. Finally, Evelyn found out that the New York City police had my legal papers. How did they get them? I asked her. I don't even want to think about it, she answered. I could hardly believe all this was happening. It felt so strange. The New York police claimed they had taken my legal papers from Stanley's house as evidence. Evidence of what? I asked Evelyn. Apparently my legal papers were the only property the New York Police Department had removed from his house. It took more than a month to get some of them back. Some were never recovered. None of the notes about the investigator or the forensic chemist were found. All the notes on trial strategy we had mapped out were missing. It was weird. I thought of Stanley's family and what they must have been going through. The circumstances of his death were so strange. I walked around with an empty feeling in my stomach for a long time. After Stanley's death, William Kunstler joined the defense team. The first thing the judge did after admitting Kunstler to the case was to rescind the order for state-paid experts. Claiming the lawyers had failed to move fast enough to get them. I became more suspicious than before. I couldn't understand why Appleby all of a sudden was so anxious we not have expert witnesses. It was obvious that without some financial help, I would never be able to afford expert witnesses. I didn't have a thin dime to my name. So as you see, it just gets sadder and sadder. And it goes to show you why more and more people who are astute in what it takes to be politically active and woke fall back and turn into some other bullshit just to get the bag. Because support for people who are committed to do the work is minimal. You get no rewards. You get no support. None. So they turn into this shit. They turn into information merchants and just talk about shit. Like Jay said, ambulance chasing. They talk about things that trigger you. They get on these emotionally triggering conversations and dialogues and separation and creating these false narratives to keep them in your face so they can keep getting your nickels and pennies. Because the true work, you can't be a coward. You got to know what you're getting into. That's why I always tell you, if they never did a day behind the wall, they're not going to be able to ever give you the information needed to bring forth that revolutionary spirit in you. You can't be in this to think you're going to get wealthy. You don't get wealthy off of this shit. No. No. I don't work like that. I don't work like that. You gotta be in this for real. Because this is your fate. Applebee's strategy was to completely intimidate the lawyers, to harass them, threaten them until they became fearful of mounting any significant opposition to the legal lynching that was supposed to be my trial. Since there were no funds to pay for anything, the defense committees and the lawyers were forced to launch a fundraising campaign. The first time Bill Kunstler spoke in New Jersey, Appleby attempted to have him thrown off the case, charging him with improper conduct and conduct that was prejudicial to the administration of justice. The improper conduct was given a lecture at Rutgers University during which he said that we needed money for expert witnesses, that the conditions of my confinement were detrimental to my aiding in my defense, and that under the law, I was presumed innocent until proven guilty. This is how they play. Hold up. Yeah, because it's getting a little dark in here. And y'all can't see my smooth skin, so I gotta make sure it's a little light. Just a little light. Applebee's order to show cause why Bill should not be thrown off the case accomplished what it intended. Instead of preparing for trial, the lawyers were forced to spend time and energy preparing for the 2-day hearing that would determine whether or not Bill stayed on the case. Appleby finally decided Bill would remain, but only after we had spent a month dealing with the madness. The implication of the hearing was clear. Any attempt the lawyers made to defend me would be met with the judge's hostility. Appleby threatened every single one of the lawyers with contempt. Not once or twice, but regularly. Lou Myers attended a fundraising cocktail party at which Angela Davis spoke. Someone sent a letter to the U.S. Treasury in Washington, and approximately 10 days later, he was under investigation by the Internal Revenue Service. Evelyn was repeatedly harassed by Appleby. Not one day went by when the so-called impartial judge failed to show his hostility to the defense team. The lawyers uncovered evidence that the offices across from the courthouse that they and the defense team were using were bugged. Motions for an investigation were denied. During a press conference, Lennox Hines had the courage to call the trial exactly what it was: illegal lynching, and a kangaroo court. Appleby cited him for contempt, and an effort was made to disbar him. Only after he took his appeal to the highest court in New Jersey was he permitted to continue practicing as a lawyer in the state of New Jersey. So you mean to tell me, after maybe about a dozen murder by law enforcement cases around the country, Ben Crump never been threatened, never been disbarred, or tried to be disbarred? Nothing. So how effective is he in getting justice? How wealthy is he now? Did y'all do the homework on that? Y'all know how many homes this man owns? Okay. So when they work with him and these fake activists who's charging people up on the regular, know that it has nothing to do with black liberation or revolution or true justice. It's a show. A show. The trial began on January 17, 1977. The same day, Gary Gilmore was shot in Utah. Gary Gilmore was the first person legally executed since the death penalty was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court in the early 1970s. His execution set the climate for the trial. The judge had denied almost every one of our motions, including my right to defend myself and act as co-counsel, a change of venue, a motion to review Harper's police record, a motion to introduce evidence that I had been victimized by the government's counterintelligence program, etc. Even though the National Jury Project had done a study of Middlesex County and had found that 83% of the people had heard about my case in the media and 70% had already formulated an opinion about my guilt, the court maintained that I could receive a fair trial. The judge said he would question the jurors and make sure they were fair and impartial. Appleby took great pains to avoid asking potential jurors whether they thought I was guilty, electing to ask them instead whether they could put their opinions aside. He carefully avoided asking their opinions about me, the Black Liberation Army, the Black Panther Party, black militants, or anything else that had been negatively and biasedly reported in newspapers. The trial lawyers had no right to question jurors. Appleby's voir dire was designed to make sure the most hypocritical, opinionated jurors stayed on the jury. Here are two examples taken directly from the transcript. And have you heard about this case? Question. Answer, yes, I have. Question. From what source may you have heard about the case? Answer, newspapers. Question. And have you discussed it with other people? Answer, occasionally. Question. And based upon whatever you may have heard from any source whatsoever, do you feel that you have already in your own mind formed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of this defendant? Answer. Well, to be perfectly honest, I think I would be a little biased. Question. Let me ask you another question. In the event that you were to be chosen to serve, do you feel that you could sit and listen to all the evidence in this case and then judge it fairly and impartially and apply the law that this judge gives you, right? And put aside completely any previous opinions or concepts or ideas about anything in the case? And then do you believe you could render a fair verdict as to the guilt or innocence of this defendant? Answer: I think I could. Question: do you believe that you could? Answer: I think so. Example number 2. Question: do you believe that based upon whatever information you may have accumulated about the case from any source whatsoever, that you have already formed an opinion in your mind as to the guilt or innocence of this defendant? Answer: I would think, yeah. I would think that she was guilty, yeah. You feel that she's guilty? Answer: yes. Question: and let me ask you another question. In the event that you might be selected to serve as a juror in this case, do you feel that you could sit and listen to the evidence and judge it impartially, apply the law the judge gives you, set aside this opinion that you have already formed? Answer: yes, I probably could. Question: and then still judge impartially whether she's guilty or innocent? Answer: yes, depending on the evidence at trial. Now, gotta pause here, because if you don't know the comrade, if you're new to who I am and you never researched my case law, you will know that I gave back a sentence of almost 30 years because of a jury question during voir dire. It is so important for us to know the entire process when it comes to courts and the justice system and what actually goes on. Now, many of us have watched Trayvon Martin. We have watched numerous trials because of the OJ trial and court TV and things, but you don't understand it unless you're sitting actually in the courtroom and can navigate through the lingo, and really don't get a true understanding until you're reading cases, case law, how motions are applied, shepherdizing cases, looking for different information to know how it works. All right? When they ask those potential jurors those questions, they have to be damn near on point with how they answer them. Now, I had a female Euro judge, female Euro prosecutor, and ended up with a jury of 10 Euro females, one brother from the diaspora, and I believe, because it was 14 of them, trying to see the 2 alternates. But anyway, one of the questions which was asked the potential jurors was this surgeon in Bellevue. And if you go, you could Google it, you could look it up. When you put my government name in there, look up Karim Johnson, State of New York versus Johnson and Sharper. You're going to see the appeal. It's going to show you exactly what got me home. They asked the surgeon in Bellevue. He was the emergency room surgeon if he could be impartial in the case, should he be seated. He said, and I'm going to quote, "I don't care what they have to say. Just the simple fact that they are over there, they're guilty to me. I work with DAs and police all day. There is nothing that they can say. No information that could come out that would make me believe they're innocent." In open court, this is what this man said. This judge asked him over and over and over again, can you be impartial? Can you put prejudice aside and judge this case fairly? He said, no. It would be hard for me. It would be difficult for me. The judge asked him a couple of questions again. He gave the same, I don't know. And they still try to make this man a juror in my jury. So now I had to strike him. Because each side during this process gets strikes. 15 for the prosecutor, 15 for the defendant. So I had to strike him. But when I strike this dude to get him up out of the jury pool, I ran out of strikes and still had more jury to pick. And that bullshit little technicality got me back home to where now I can educate my people. That bullshit. But it took me a decade to do it. So you got to understand the process of this thing here. They was railroading her from the rip, as they did many others. Never had a shot of proving themselves innocent. And we don't understand that a lot of the crimes that they were charged for, the crimes were being carried out by police and agents who were dressed as Panthers and liberators and all these things, and pinned on a lot of these individuals here. So he didn't have a shot. And you still didn't have the sympathy, the empathy of our own people, because their minds wasn't right. That's why I say it's for the battle, is for the minds of your people. You can't pick up a firearm and go at this shit. You can't feed money to this shit. You can't force somebody in a seat. Your people's minds have to be militant and revolutionary. You have to understand. You have to digest every ounce of what took place during that time if we are going to celebrate it as the only time we were at the top of our militancy. Don't let people gloss over the bullshit. Don't let people gloss over that time period. You have elders that's just coming home from this. Let them be the guides. Stop looking at these dudes with these catchphrases. Bullshit dashikis. And sitting propped up on social media with shiny lips and shit. Chastising you for not being B1 or on code, and they ass ain't on code. What is the code? These were the typical, excuse me, these were typical of the answers given. The judge refused to remove the above two jurors for cause on the basis of bias that will prevent them from being fair and impartial jurors. And our preemptory challenges were quickly exhausted. Just like I said, exhausted, as would happen to me. Remaining on the final jury were two friends, one girlfriend, and two nephews of New Jersey State Troopers. The so-called jury selection process was the biggest farce in legal history. About halfway through the so-called jury selection process, I was ready to call it a day. As bad as this jury sounded, it looked even worse. I didn't want to participate, but almost everyone on the defense team thought not participating was a mistake. If you don't, we'll never get anything on the record. You'll never even be able to convince an appeal court of anything. You've got to get up there and tell your side of the story. We can prove by the medical testimony that you were shot in the back of your hand, in the back, with your hand raised in the air. We can't prove that Harper shot first. Excuse me, we can prove that Harper shot first. We can prove that after you were shot, your hand was paralyzed. And from the location of his gunshot wound, it would have been impossible for you to have shot him with your left hand. We can prove that Harper shot first. We can prove this if you take the stand. We can prove I was tired of this case. I damn sure didn't believe that any appeals court was going to free me, or that any racist white prejudice jury would either. It was obvious I didn't have one chance in a million of receiving any kind of justice. The financial problems, expert witness problems, personality problems among the lawyers, in addition to rotting away in solitary confinement, had taken their toll on me. Every day when I entered the courtroom, I felt like I was entering the theater of the absurd. I wanted no part of it. The lawyers said that I could create a political climate which they thought would force the appeal court to give in if I participated in the trial and put on the record the fact that I was innocent. They were convinced that at the last minute, the forensic chemist they were trying to locate in Canada was going to come in and save the day. I didn't put any stock in that, but I knew that keeping the momentum going around what was happening was important. I decided to remain and participate even though it was killing me. The trial went absurdly on. An all-white jury was selected based on the advice of Kunstler and the Jury Project, who decided that even though the jurors seated in the panel were horrible, the others were even worse. Not only did the judge deny my motion to act as co-counsel, he refused to permit the lawyers to read my opening statement to the jury. The defense team's headquarters, located in New Brunswick, was broken into, papers rummaged through and stolen, and the judge refused to investigate, calling the motion frivolous. The state's witnesses almost all of whom were pigs, got up and said whatever they were told to say. We had no expert witnesses to refute or even evaluate their testimony. The main witness, Harper, the state trooper I was supposed to have shot, testified he had told an untruth on direct examination, but denied it was a lie. Crazy. I spent most of the trial looking up at the ceiling and hating myself for sitting there in the first place. When the time came for me to testify, I was shocked. I had thought I would be able to go into everything, being a fugitive, how I became a fugitive, the entire political scenario that had led to being in the courtroom, but then they told me something about opening the door. Opening the door, it was explained, was like opening Pandora's box. If I gave the political reasons for my being a fugitive, the prosecutor could then introduce all kind of prejudicial evidence that had nothing to do with what happened on the turnpike in order to show my criminal intent. If I opened the door, the prosecutor would be able to introduce manuals of guerrilla warfare and a whole stack of other material they found in the car that had nothing to do with this trial. In the absence of political witnesses who subpoenas for their appearance the judge had refused to issue, who would have testified about COINTELPRO's systematic attack on the Black Liberation Movement and on blacks in general, my testimony would have been distorted. I wanted to back out completely, denounce the trial, but it was too late. The only way out was to testify, get my side of what happened on the record, and avoid opening the door. The year of solitary confinement had made me almost mute. As I testified, I held on to a small picture of my child. Remember when she had that child. And now this is 1977. Imagine the trauma. Of not bonding with that child. Being in solitary confinement. Untreated. After being wounded by bullets. And brutalized in a damn basement. When I sit back today and examine why I participated in that trial, I think I must